Hi everybody, I'm Karl Wells. Today we're offering you something a little bit different. My guest is Jennifer Guy, former CBC journalist. But actually, I'm her guest because Jennifer decided she wanted to interview me about my new memoir, Openly Karl. This is part one of her two-part interview with me. I hope you enjoy it.
Openly Karl considers the expanse of Karl Wells' career and the nuances of his personal life, including coming to terms with being gay during a less tolerant period of Newfoundland and Labrador's history and throughout the subsequent decades of social change. It's at times fascinating and funny, at others harrowing and heartbreaking. It's all of that. It's fascinating, funny, harrowing, and heartbreaking. I first want to ask you, Karl, what's the reaction?
The reaction to the book has been wonderful. I'm getting a lot of people telling me that they found out things about me they didn't know. A lot of them say I've been very brave in writing what I did, but now I have to say I really don't feel I've been brave. I set out to tell my story and everything that happened to me during my life and to be honest about it and cover as many bases as I could, and that's all I did really.
But I think it took guts, and to me guts and bravery are sort of together, because you did reveal a lot of your personal life that not everybody would be willing to do, as honestly and frankly as you did.
Yeah, I can't say that I was entirely, what's the word, calm about what I was writing, because in fact there were times when I was writing things that had troubled me, where I had to get up and just drop what I was doing, stop writing, and get out of my office, and maybe go back to it the next day or whatever, because in a sense, I guess I was resurrecting a lot of ghosts from the past and, things that weren't pleasant. And I'm referring to, incidents of homophobia and,
Yes.
and bullying, that sort of thing. It wasn't pleasant revisiting.
Certainly
but
not.
I felt I had to write it.
Yes. As a catharsis or as a sharing of life for others who may experience the same thing?
As a sharing,
yeah.
I think it was important to call out certain people and tell people about certain incidents. I thought that was important, particularly for younger LGBTQ people today, to know a little bit about what it was like for me, but not so much me, for what my generation, the baby boomers, went through.
Yes.
Because we did go through, when you consider the things that happened during my lifetime. When I was a young kid realizing I was gay, homosexuality was illegal.
Yes.
In fact, there were people sitting in jails.
Yes.
Because they were gay. That's all. They hadn't done anything.
Yes. I'm going to in a moment walk through your path, your journey with your homosexuality, and it did start at an extremely young age for you. But before, I want a special section on that. But what struck me most, and you acknowledge it in the book, the irony that little Karl Wells did not want his sister to take his picture, didn't want the Sparrow fella to take your picture. You shone from a camera, and yet you've made a marvelous livelihood out of it.
I have no idea why I didn't want my picture taken, but that was my first memory. I was 4 years of age. My sister came out. I was sitting on her front steps, and my sister was going to take my picture with her brownie camera.
Yeah.
And I rebelled. There was no way I was going to let her take my picture. I didn't want my picture taken. And I got up and I ran away, and she chased me and eventually got a very bad picture, blurry picture of me. But
yes, it's in the book.
Yeah. I have no idea why, but no, I didn't. Now, part of that may have been the fact that my sister was, at the time, I was 4, she was probably about 12. Mm-hmm. She was older than me, and my mother had given her the responsibility, sometimes she gave her the responsibility of looking after me.
Right.
And sometimes my sister asked me to do things or told me to do things that I didn't want to do. And I felt, because she was my sister, that I didn't have to listen to her. I had to listen to my mother and my father, but why should I have to listen to my sister? So we quite often,
you
clashed.
Heads.
And so that may have been part of it too.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't like having my picture taken.
We'll deal with Betty later too. When she was advised, or you advised her of your homosexuality, she said, "Oh, she's a psychiatrist." But we'll talk about that in that section. But it struck me still as ironic that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a conflict, that a person can be shy, and as you said in the Humberlog interview in Corner Brook, you are a very private person. It's not a contradiction that a shy or private person can still have a public life, because it's your profession.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say at least half of the people I worked with in the business, very shy people, very shy people. And when we would have to do public appearances, I know for some of them it was very, very difficult. It was difficult for me in the beginning. I did not like doing public appearances. It's one thing to sit in front of a camera, this inanimate object, and talk to it, but it's an entirely different thing when you're sitting there and you've got 100 or 200 people in front of you.
But you got over it.
I did get over it, yeah.
But it took work?
Yeah, that took work, yeah. Now, I had no problem going on stage and acting and pretending to be somebody else, because when you're doing theater, you're in character, and you're not really paying any attention to the audience, and they're in darkness anyway, you can't see them. So that's different. But when you are being yourself and you're speaking to a group of people, it's different. Yeah.
Yes, I'm interested to talk in a moment about your radio drama and that evolution into television, but I'm trying to do it a bit chronologically. So I'd like to start with school. And you had beautiful chapter titles in your book, and the one where you go to school is called Abandoned and Betrayed. And what a traumatic experience it was for you to go to school. You did not want to go. No,
I didn't. And again, I'm not really sure why. I have a good idea, which is, I lived alone with my mother until I reached school age. I didn't interact with other children. I had created my own world, and it comprised reading books or looking at books, looking at the pictures in books mostly, or magazines, and watching TV and listening to the radio, and watching my mother as she did her housework or did her baking or was preparing supper, that sort of thing. That was my world. And the only kids I saw were the children I would see on television, on Howdy Doody, for example, or Romper Room, But they were in that box. They were on that TV screen. And so the idea of having to leave this nest and go into this strange place with all of these strange people, it terrified me. And I didn't go to school for the first week or so. Yeah. And I would hide when it was time to go to school.
Under your mother's bed?
I would hide, in different places. Yeah, that's right. I'd hide in a cupboard or
And your dad finally had to come and drag you out by the scruff of the neck.
Well, my mother actually was the one who finally got me out from under the bed by terrifying me. I mean, my mother had an explosive temper. You didn't see it very often. I only saw it twice in my life. I inherited that temper. Thank God it's only shown up in my life, and you know, I'm old now. It's only shown up in my life 3 times. Thank God. Her father had a temper, and I inherited it. But she just blew, and she got me out from under the bed just by scaring the hell out of me. Yeah. And so I went to school. My father drove me to school. And I remember going up the hallway, and I remember the smell of the school and the wax or whatever they were using on the floor. And he put me in and said, "This is Karl," to the teacher, and all of these other children were looking at me. And he closed the door, and he walked up the hall, and I thought, where are you going? You know,
that's why you said abandoned and betrayed.
That's why I felt abandoned, yeah.
And then to go ahead many years, then your school experience was bullying, and you got swarmed. I mean, it was not a pleasant experience except for art school.
Yeah, art class was my salvation. I loved art class, and the system that I went through, the United Church school system, starting at Harrington, Holloway, United Junior High, Prince of Wales Collegiate. Every single year I had a brilliant art teacher, all, you know, well-known Newfoundland artists, Frank Witherspoon, Frank Lapointe, Gwen Seary,
yeah.
Reginald Shepard. All of these people taught me art, and I loved it. It was like going into another realm, you know, and being able to create something and learn how to create and make it better and better and better and better. And
that was your only comfort zone, I would think, in
great.
school, because
yeah,
the principal humiliated you, and those girls that swarmed you. I thought that was just such a dreadful experience.
That was a horrible experience.
It was.
Yeah, yeah. I guess they clued into the fact that I wasn't that I was gay, and you know, I wasn't showing any interest in girls like the other boys, and I guess they thought, you know, here's somebody we can razz and really, you know, do something.
Girls that age can be pretty mean.
Yeah, they were incredibly. They were mean girls.
Yeah.
And
anyway, it didn't hold you back in your wonderful career, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And what I think it's the buttress of your career is determination. And you went after every new step in your life with a methodology. You researched, you entered it with great knowledge of the spectrum of things required of you to get into that door. It started with VOWR. When you changed the Friday night stuff, you were with VOWR 69 to 73, ETV, Educational Television at Memorial University 72, and then CBC 75 on. And all the way, you were growing and expanding your creativity and the opportunity for these media outlets to explore new audiences and bring them in. I mean, you've got to be proud of your career.
Yeah, I am, yeah. And I get a kick out of occasionally tuning into VOWR and hearing a program that I created.
Yeah, yeah. I played it this morning, actually, getting ready to come, and they were playing classical music, and I thought, Karl can pronounce the composer's name for sure.
Yeah, and not only that, but created when I was about, 17 years of age or 18. I started there when I was 16.
Yes.
That's the first time I went on radio.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But you said, entering that phase of your life, that you're motivated by the love of the human voice.
Very
Can you
much
talk
so,
about that a bit more?
Well, when I was a kid, we had this 1950s floor model console. It had a radio, only AM, and a record player, and which back then, most of our collection was 78 RPM records.
Yeah, I know that size. Yeah.
But the radio was in the middle, and the speakers were in the middle, underneath the radio dials. And I loved sitting there and turning this dial and tuning in, CJON, VOCM, VOAR, VOWR. Those were about the only stations we had. There was no FM then; it was just AM. Mm-hmm. And I think it was CJON. They had a show that would come on midday called Art Baker's Notebook, and Art Baker was a broadcaster from, he was broadcasting from Hollywood. And this was probably some syndicated thing that, CJON would get, and they'd play it, to fill 15 minutes. But he was a commentator, but he always told stories, human interest stories, that always had, a happy ending, mm-hmm. And started with somebody struggling, in life, and then turning their life around, and there was a happy ending. Yeah. But it was his voice. He had this beautiful, resonant voice. Yeah. And I would listen to that voice, and to me it was beautiful, and it was the same if I was listening to a woman broadcaster who had a beautiful voice, mm-hmm. who spoke, with great diction and clarity, yes. and quality. The voice is a wonderful instrument. It's a wonderful instrument when you hear somebody singing beautifully, but it's also a wonderful instrument when you hear somebody speaking beautifully.
Well, it's clear in the book how scientific, I would say, your approach was to developing your voice. I don't think most listeners really appreciate how complex and challenging it is to have the right voice. You talk about tonality, about pacing, about emotion, all these things you learned as you were going into drama, mainly.
Yeah, well, radio acting was a great help too. Yeah. Because in radio acting, and you're playing characters, and the only way to, indicate that you're really old or, is through the voice, because they don't have anything else to go by. There's no picture. And it's a great medium too, because of course they call it the theater of the mind, and people imagine what you look like and what the setting is and so forth. That's the other thing I liked about listening to Art Baker's Notebook, because I would imagine all these places, that he would talk about in his little chats. But radio acting was great, because I learned how to do accents and British accents, American accents, whatever. Yeah.
And then you were mimicking a lot, including JFK, and that was quickly terminated upon learning his death.
Yes, that's right. I as a little kid, I would amuse my parents and their friends by doing John F. Kennedy's voice, or, singing like Elvis Presley or whatever.
I was going to ask you to do JFK, but I see in your book you don't do that anymore, so I won't ask you.
JFK,
but I do recall, and then I'm going to go in more detail about CBC in a moment, but I do recall when I worked with you at educational television in the early 70s, you were always over in a corner with a tape recorder, taping your voice, listening back, taping your voice, listening, mastering it. You were so, as I said, methodical in how you mastered your skill. Yeah. You were very focused.
Very focused, yeah. I spent a lot of my life studying other people I admired. A lot of people who worked with me back, for example, in the radio acting days, would say, you were so quiet. You just sat by the side and paid attention to what was going on, but you never kind of engaged. You were always just sort of sitting there, taking everything in, and that's true, because I was learning. I was trying to soak it all up, and I learned a lot by operating that way.
Plus, you were shy in that environment.
I was shy.
They counted me in many when he asks you to pop up off the sideline to do something really electric, and you do it and you pop back, go right back to where you were, like not talking to anybody. But this other Karl came alive when you were the actor Karl.
That's right. When I was being somebody else, I had no problem.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I was shy. I still am, really. I find it very difficult to go up to. I'll see somebody I want to go up and talk to, and it takes a lot for me to go up and say hello.
And once you do, it's a comfortable experience.
Yeah.
Karl, now your experience with CBC is quite something, and I'm going to get in detail in a moment. But when I read about the Archbishop coming to CBC Radio in St. John's, and tell me what the staff did.
Well, they all knelt down and kissed his ring.
I just find that extraordinary. How did that come about?
Well, that was not something I had witnessed personally, but Harold Morris, who was the scheduling officer for the announcers when I went to work at CBC, and CBC had a huge stable of announcers back in those days. Must have been, almost 20 announcers. He said that, back in the day, not much before I started there, on the top floor of the CBC building, the TA building on Duckworth Street.
Yes.
What was a beautiful Art Deco building. Unfortunately, it's gone to rack and ruin since. On the top floor of that building, the entire staff would line up along the hallway, and the Archbishop would make an annual visit, and he would, meet each member of staff, and as he went down the line, each member of staff would kneel and kiss his ring.
Just extraordinary. The other thing I really liked when I read, I don't know if you can remember the first words you said on CBC Radio. It was around Aubrey Mack's time. Can you give it to us?
Yeah. That was the time signal.
Official time signal.
Yeah.
Can you say it?
I don't know whether I remember it.
This is I really want to hear
from
you
the
say
National Research Council in Ottawa. The official time signal. It's 1:30 p.m. Newfoundland Daylight Savings Time. At the beginning of the long dash, it's 1:30 p.m. Newfoundland Savings Time.
You say that in your sleep. Everybody who ever listened to CBC Radio remembers that.
Yeah. And after I left radio to go to television, they had me on tape. So I continued doing it for years after I'd left radio to go to television, and eventually they replaced me with somebody.
That was the start of your legacy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Now, Karl, my observation of your relationship with CBC is a love-hate relationship. So, how do you feel about that?
Well, hate is a strong word, Jennifer.
Well, appropriate in some of your accounts.
Well, love, mostly love, because when I was growing up, I absolutely adored CBC. I would listen to Max Ferguson on the radio, doing his voices and everything, and I listened to the radio drama on CBC Radio, and I watched CBC television, and to my mind, working at CBC was the ultimate. I mean, if you managed to get a job at the CBC, you had made it in broadcasting in Canada. And so there was I had a lot of love for the CBC, and I was thrilled when I finally got a permanent job there. And I back then, I say in the book, when I went into the CBC building on University Avenue, it was like going into CBS in Hollywood, or some big Hollywood studio, because there were people running around in costumes. They had costume designers, they had makeup artists, they had carpenters who built sets, and they were doing variety shows, dramas, not just news. News was a small part of the operation. Now news is all they have left. But back then, it was something.
It was a hopping place.
It was a hopping place.
Yes.
And it was a great support to our Newfoundland culture.
Absolutely.
And people involved in the culture industry in this province. You know, a lot of people worked for CBC, and either full-time or part-time, and were supported by the CBC. So it was great, and I was thrilled to work there. And I thought when I went to work there that it would be a very liberal environment where nobody would make any judgments about you.
Yes.
And I quickly realized that there was a darker side, and there were several people there who were clearly homophobic.
Yes.
And didn't mind letting you know that they were homophobes. And so I just thought, you know, this is not the Shangri-La I thought it was.
Yes, you said at one point CBC tolerated but did not accept homosexuality.
Yeah, that's the feeling I had. Yeah, in that earlier version of the CBC.
Yes.
I'm not saying that the CBC is anything like that today. It isn't, and thank God for that. But back then, yeah, it was. I thought that was a reasonable way of describing it.
You were very specific in citing John Furlong as your tormentor.
Yeah.
Seems to me he had it out for you, according to what is in the book. He had it out for you in the beginning. He tried his best to compromise your career. He talked about taking the weather out, the community segment out, and you tried to take a charge to human resources. None of it was successful. It was a bit of a farce by this account. But is your attitude to John now one of revenge by exposing him so much, or catharsis to get it out, or to...
No, I just think that he was a troubled human being, and unfortunately, whatever he had inside him, that was, you know, malevolent.
Yeah.
He decided to make me, you know, a target and vent his malevolence on me.
I would like to go in our next segment back to the love side and talk about your audience and the enormous adulation you received from your audience, and we'll talk about that in our next session.
Okay, thank you.